Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Prue.
This is Bryce Vine.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is Daryl Aiden.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Boy, just a great album fight here. 2 Hall of Fame acts, 2 legendary acts even beyond that. We've got The Doors against U2's All That You Can't Leave Behind. I have recused myself from judging this week, so I'm only part of the compubox. And I've got 3, I think we've got a good impartial panel. We have Dr. Tim Furnish, Todd Nemet, and, of course, Brian Theis is in here. So, fellas, thank you very much for being here and judging. Let me get Phil to give us the corner call. Hey, Phil, who's fighting this week?
Today's album fight is an 11-round battle between 2 heavyweight members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In the red corner, returning to arrangements of almost entirely guitar, bass, and drums, we have U2. With their 7 Grammy-winning 10th studio album from 2000, All That You Can't Leave Behind. And their opponent in the blue corner, we have the poetic musings and psychedelic sounds of one of the most influential bands of the 60s, The Doors, with their eponymous debut studio album from 1967, The Doors. Let's get ready to ramble. Take it away, judges.
Perfect, Phil. Thanks. Now let's see what the great analysis is this week from Richard Lackie. Richard?
The numbers on this fight are definitive. And when I say definitive, I mean on paper, numbers only, this is a blowout. But the question is, will the fight be a blowout? Well, that's where the human element comes into play, and I don't think it will be as one-sided as the numbers let on. Let's see what they had to say. On paper, this fight is a knockout. It's over. Throw in the towel. It's that kind of a fight. Of 12 parameters that were used in this fight, U2 only managed to score 1 point and 1 tie. The Doors scored the other 10 points. So it'd be very easy to say 9-2 for the Doors or 8-3 for the Doors. But I don't think it's going to be that easy, and here's why. The one category they won is a critics category, and it's the big one. See, because not only did All That You Can't Leave Behind win 7 Grammys, one of those Grammys was Album of the Year, and those have always performed very strongly here. Looking at the contest by tracks, one thing became clear very quickly. This is a fight that is super front-loaded, especially for U2. After track 5, the Doors dominate the numbers. Mind you, they aren't necessarily knockdown type numbers, so U2 will likely pull some points here and there in the latter rounds. But the weakness of U2 is the fact that it's so front-loaded. If it does get close at the end, I'll be interested to see if the song The End by the Doors helps or hurts them. It's a long one and weird. So if it's still anyone's fight by then, the Doors will have to hope the judges dig the weird stuff. I think this will be a unanimous decision, but I think it'll be closer than the numbers let on. I also think it all depends on judges' perspective, because both bands are polarizing to certain people. I think we have a 7-4 fight, possibly even 6-5 on some cards, if a few rounds go U2's way. But I think it's going to be unanimous. Either way, it's hard to see the Doors losing this one. It's going to be interesting. Back to you guys.
Yeah, the numbers predict a blowout. Let's see what happens. All right, fellas, what are your thoughts pre-fight? Brian, go.
It's pre-fight? It's going to be interesting to see. This is U2's, I didn't catch what Phil said, it's their 9th or 10th studio album versus the Doors premiere. I wonder what the experience versus the rawness of the Doors is going to show us.
Yeah, expand on that thought, Todd. What do you think about this fight going in?
I love it. I think, it reminds me a lot of the Billy Idol
Talking Heads one because it's the handsome Sybaritic tenor versus Brian Eno's production. So there's a lot of parallels to the last one. This is, when we were discussing this earlier, I like the idea of kind of the craftsmanship and the, of a later album by U2, with their 10th album. And then the Doors were just kind of like raw energy, sort of the world's most dangerous bar band at that point, and just coming right out of the gate. So comparing kind of people that have perfected the craft versus people that are just unbridled energy.
And what about you, Dr. Furnish? What do you have for us?
Well, since I'm such a popular culture geek, I really had to sort of deprogram myself a little bit because, every time I hear a Doors song, I think Apocalypse Now, or I see Krusty the Clown singing it in The Simpsons when he sang Break On Through, which is one of the classic Simpsons scenes. And so I kind of had to deprogram myself from that and just try to go with the music and not so much the sort of cultural artifacts that go with that.
Yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun to score it, and it's really tough because the songs, especially for the Doors, they're so familiar. They're part of who you are. But then later in the album, both albums kind of dropped off the wall a little bit. It seemed like the late album stuff was interesting. I guess I should just shut up and let's just go ahead and get this thing going. Round one. Todd, why don't you start us off? Let's go ahead and do, how about this? Beautiful Day versus Break On Through. What's your breakdown?
All right. So Beautiful Day starts out with, I think it's Brian Eno on the synthesizer. It starts off kind of a little bit differently for a U2 song, and then it breaks into a classic U2 kind of, late U2 sound. I really like the way that the verses have kind of a negative connotation, or they're sort of downbeat, and then the chorus is upbeat, and the music is really, really upbeat. So it's a very, very interesting song. I think really good song. Break On Through to the Other Sides. Obviously, it's a classic. It's referring to the Doors of Perception, right? And it's just a classic kind of a song, canonical like staple of AOR radio or classic rock radio. This was a really close one for me because I really like both songs, but I gave it to the Doors, 10-9.
All right, 10-9 for the Doors. Off to a quick start. Brian, go ahead.
Beautiful Day. U2, when they made this album, they made a remark saying that they made this album to get back to being the best rock and roll band in the world after the last two, Zooropa and Pop, which I think only I liked. I really love the intro. It's a perfect way to start the album. The electropop, it moves away from the electropop sounds of the last couple albums. The bright guitars, Eno synth fills, they sound so good. The drums during the hook, they get louder and more powerful, along with Bono. It's just a great use of instrumentation to go along with the vocals. But, with Brian Eno, you really expect that. As for Break On Through, the Doors, they punch back hard in round one. I think Ray Manzarek owns this track. His keys transport the listener, at least this listener, to a dream jungle where the guitars and drums slash away at the undergrowth as you're trying to escape from an unseen assailant. The drums and strings open up strong, but the keys, they really make the song work. Lyrically, I think it gets repetitive, which can add to the sense of desperation, but poetically, I know they can do better. This is it's a real tough round to score, but I wound up giving it a 10-9 to U2.
Wow, okay. And my personal dream tiger, Tim, why don't you give us your round one score?
Yeah, this was, and by the way, Brian, I also love Zooropa, so you're not alone in that. And must have been a few million people that did it, just a lot of people didn't want to admit it. But yeah, you're right. What was it they said they were auditioning to be re-auditioning or something to be the best rock and roll band around when this came out at the turn of the millennium, at the start of the millennium. I'll go ahead and say I gave this 10-9 U2 also. I just think Beautiful Day is one of their better songs. I think the lyrics are really uplifting. I like the way the song's put together. Break On Through the Other Side. I mean, I know it's trying to be deep and it's supposed to be deep, but I'm not quite sure what it's about. I'm not sure they knew what it was about either. But, it's a cool song, but I just have to program myself to not automatically dismiss a song because we're getting all that Vox coming in there. I kind of like the bossa nova thing that's going on, which I guess I read they were influenced by that at the time. But I just think that Beautiful Day is a better song. So, again, I made it 10-9 U2 on this one.
That's a close round, so it's not surprised to see you guys go split on that. Let's try round 2, Stuck in a Moment You Can't Get Out Of versus Soul Kitchen. Brian, what do you think?
I'm going to start off with Soul Kitchen. You know, this song, it's undeniably the Doors. Every element stands out as Doorsian. You know, the keyboards, the guitars, Jim's vocals. I love the line, "Your brain seems bruised with numb surprise." You know, I love the fact that it's written about a soul food restaurant, and that's a place where you go for comfort and to avoid everything that's going around in the outside world. Stuck in a Moment. I know this song precluded the events of September 11th, but I always associate this album with September 11th. I don't know why. I think I listened to this a heck of a lot back then. I think it was probably in the CD player in my truck, so it was just a frequent listen. And I know that U2 played at the Super Bowl, so maybe just somewhere in my mind it's all muddled together. You know, this song in particular, it elicits that response. It always takes me back to those first few days after the attacks, where everywhere you went or looked, you were hit with the realization of what was happening. You know, we were still in that moment, trying to get our bearings and move forward. I love the percussive elements of this song. I don't know how they do it, but there's that water drop sound. It sounds like just a drop of water, and it makes you seem like you're in a room with a drippy faucet and you're just kind of stuck there. And I wound up giving this round to U2, 10-9.
Tim, how about you?
The thing that struck me about this, listening to this closely, because again, I've listened to this, 1,000 times, is, sometimes I think, and I'm guilty of this too, we get so caught up in either supporting or taking umbrage at Bono's, political statements, we forget what a damn good singer the guy is. The guy's just got a really good voice, and he can adjust it in different ways, do different things with it, much like the Edge does with his guitar. And I just think his vocal is really, really good on this. I mean, yeah, and I know a lot of people associate it with 9/11. It was supposedly originally written for, he was friends with the guy from INXS or whatever that wound up killing himself, I think it was.
Michael Hutchence.
Hutchence, yeah.
Yeah, so it was like a wow, I wish I'd have said this to you while you're alive song. So it's a pretty, the lyrics are pretty deep. And I really like that. So it's a good song with good lyrics. It's almost gospel-esque in some ways, I think. Soul Kitchen, it's okay. It's just, I have to fight the impulse to say it's just so dated. But you know what? I really wish the Blues Brothers had covered this song back on their album in 1980. This would have been a perfect Blues Brothers song. I particularly I wrote it down. This line, and it's, of course, struck me as awesome. Your fingers weave quick minarets. Okay, I don't know how much LSD Jim was on when he wrote that, but that was an awesome line. Soul Kitchen's kind of fun, but Stuck in a Moment You Can't Get Out Of is a better song. 10-9 U2. All
right, and Todd, what about you?
That's interesting. I agree with a lot of what the previous two people said. Soul Kitchen. It's funny that we all have our favorite lyric from there, because I liked where he said cars crawl past all stuffed with eyes. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't associate Jim Morrison with deep lyrics or particularly deep thoughts. But this one for some reason lyrically is comes off really, really well. I like the idea of like all the bars are closed, and then where are we going to go now? We went to Frisch's Big Boy personally, but we weren't quite as intense as Jim Morrison. But but I think this is just a great song and a great, like you said, it's quintessential Doors. It's the Doorsiest Doors. Stuck in a Moment You Can't Get Out Of it's an interesting song. I don't like it as much musically. About Michael Hutchence' suicide. It's interesting. Bono calls him a fool. It's interesting. But I think that's part of his thing was he wanted to talk to him and give him some tough love before he hurt himself. I remember I lived in England at the time that all that stuff went down, and it was huge. The tabloids with Bob Geldof and Paula Jones and Mike Hutchence. It was kind of sickening how the press latched onto that thing, and it was sad, how that all ended. And I think Paula, am I getting her name right? Paul Jones, Paula. Anyway, she died of a drug overdose. Actually, not too much longer after that. So it's just a sad story. I gave this one to Soul Kitchen to the Doors, 10-9.
All right. Well, that's round 2. Let's go ahead and do round 3, Elevation versus the Crystal Ship. Tim, what do you have?
Well, this song is Irish rap versus a song that's ostensibly, some of it's taken from a 12th century Irish book. So it's kind of an Irish battle in a sense. What struck me about Elevation was, remember the connection they made to the original Lara Croft movie with this
Yeah.
song.
Yeah, I watched the video.
Which is not a negative, by the way. So that's good. Elevation, just a very interesting song. I mean, it's kind of a throwaway song. I really like the guitars in it. Again, I mean, it's kind of like U2 trying to do pseudo rap kind of thing, but it works pretty well. The Crystal Ship. I love the keyboards in this. The lyrics start out sort of, I guess love songy, and then they kind of devolve into typical psychedelia. So I'm not quite sure what it's about. And maybe I'm a Philistine when it comes to music, but I had a hard time discerning a really prominent melody in the song. So this one was really close for me, but because of the guitars and the chutzpah that U2 had to do a song like this, I gave this 10-9 Elevation.
On chutzpah, they get by. Todd, how did you see it?
Yeah, these are both really good songs. Elevation, and Bono named his private equity firm after this song, by the way. And I couldn't find anything about Jim Morrison's private equity firm, but anyway. And the video is completely ridiculous. One thing I really liked about it, I thought was a really nice touch. There's evil U2 and then there's good U2, and they play against each other at the end of the video. So Evil Edge is playing a Gucci guitar made by Mark Nickel, and there were like 22 of them made. and then Good Edge plays a 1966 Gibson SG with cherry finish. And I thought that was a hilarious touch when I saw the video. It's like the rarest guitar, and versus like just the awesome Gibson SG. Anyway, that was a super nice touch I like. This song is U2 kind of hitting on all cylinders, except the lyric "mole living in a hole, digging up my soul." I think that's better off being forgotten. Slightly gave this to Elevation. The Crystal Ship. It's actually one of my favorite Doors songs, which is what made this hard for me to decide. I think it shows how the Doors are so much more musically interesting than U2. The intricacies, the chord changes, the key changes. Even that atonal note at the very, very end of the song as it fades out. It's just, it's just such a super, they're just so musically interesting, even though it is sort of a dated sound, a little bit dated production, And I think it's a just great breakup song. It's kind of like Jim Morrison telling his girlfriend Mary, like, I'm going to go be famous, and I'll drop a line when I come back, It's like, it has a kind of a desperation to it, and kind of a blasé attitude as well. It kind of ends in that funny twist. So very, very difficult for me, but I wound up giving it to you 10-9.
And Brian, close us out for round 3.
As far as Elevation goes, I really love the dichotomy. He's a mole living in a hole, but she makes him feel like he can fly. I love the line that he's strung out like a guitar.
Yeah.
The water drop sound, it returns here in the song, and it does a great job of making me feel like I'm the mole living in that damp and dark hole. I don't think the song is as strong as the first 2 tracks, but I do love a fuzzy guitar, and it just drips with that Daniel Lanois influence, which I really like. The Crystal Ship, I love the Doors, but the elements they're bringing to this fight, they just don't have the tool bag to compete right now. This is a very good song. I love Manzarek's keys and Densmore's drums, Morrison's trippy vocals. They do a great job of painting this psychedelic landscape, but they just fall short of matching the production quality of U2, and I gave this one to U2 10-9.
So, Brian, is this a seasoned band taking it to a 60s bound rookie band?
I think at this point it is, yeah. I mean, when I started scoring the fight and I was looking at it, I'm like, I really love these Doors songs, but it just doesn't get to that level.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's go ahead and start up round 4. It's going to be 20th Century Fox versus Walk On. Todd, how did you score it?
All right, Walk On. I love that they put in that cool guitar sound, that Edge 80s sort of sound, and it's always cool to hear Edge and Eno together. Kind of get even I'm not the world's biggest U2 fan. It just gives me chills to hear that guitar sound come in. U2 just keeps getting stronger, and I love the ending with the lyrics. It's like, all that you fashion, all that you build, all that you make. It's really nice way to end the song. I really, really like the song. 20th Century Fox, it rocks out because it's the Doors, and they still have that kind of bar band feel that they can do. And it's hard to get that on a recording, by the way, but they manage it. But it still feels sort of like a throwaway, and it feels like Jim Morrison is carrying the song with it kind of screaming. So this was easy to get to walk on YouTube 10-9.
Brian, how did you have round 4?
20th Century Fox. I thought it was, it's a cute, playful song and the nifty play on words with the studio names and making it about a girl. The guitars and keyboard are great. The lyrics are fun and playful, and it's wrapped up in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, so it's got that going for it. Walk On. It's not an exceptional song by U2 standards, but it's still a very good song. All the elements are there. I've never seen U2 live. That's something I want to remedy. But this is a song I can imagine actually being played live and filling the arena or stadium with sound. Part of the measure of a song is having a place in a live set, and this song passes. The way the guitar fills and resonates and then drops off to give Bono room to work. It's just a great song. And right now, the experience and production are dominating. And it's 10-9 to U2.
Tim, how about you? Round 5.
I got to start out by asking Todd something.
Right.
Todd, when you said that you think that U2 is not as interesting a band as the Doors, I hope you meant just on this album.
Yeah, no, I get into this a little bit later. I feel like U2 comes out of a solid rock background, but I feel like the Doors bring just a much varied thing. Like you mentioned the bossa nova at the beginning of the first track, and some of the jazz stuff and some of the chords. I feel like musically they just have a better grasp of theory and music. That's what I'm saying.
That's interesting because I see exactly the opposite. I think about half the songs on this album for the Doors sound much alike, dominated by their Vox and their.
Yeah.
I just think that they sound much alike. And U2, if you ever listen, as Brian mentioned earlier, listen to Zooropa, then listen to the Joshua Tree. Those are radically different albums. And I think U2 is far more, and again, U2's been around longer and had a lot more to do, so that's kind of unfair to the Doors.
Yeah.
But I just think U2 has a lot more musical range than the Doors do, and I think that's obvious here. But again, it's unfair. It's album number 10 against album number 1, so.
Yeah. Well, Tim, another thing is, and I made a note of this later on, the rhythm section of U2 sort of drives me crazy. The drummer is not great, especially compared to the Doors drummer, who I think is just phenomenal. And the bass is like dum 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 dum, and so that rhythm section. I think Henry Rollins was the one who pointed it out, and then ever since then I've been able to hear him the same way. And that rhythm section I don't think is as good as the rest of the band. I think the Edge is amazing. Bono's an amazing singer. The producers are amazing, and I feel like they're sort of dead weight. They look cool drumming and stuff, but if you listen to that, it's not great, and I've always felt that rhythm section held them back.
That's interesting. Anyway, all right, to get back to our original question here, Pete, sorry. Walk On is the second song on this album to win a Grammy, and although there has been some real schlock in history to win Grammys, that's not necessarily a positive, but it's a good song. So we have a song about a Burmese dissident versus a song about a hot chick. Maybe the Burmese dissident was a hot chick too, I don't really know. But this song is just a lot deeper. It has, I think, one of the best U2 lines ever in history. And there have been a lot of good U2 lines, I think. You're packing a suitcase for a place none of us has been. I have to say it the proper way. A place that has to be believed to be seen. I just think that's an awesome, awesome lyric. I think this song, both musically and lyrically, is far superior to 20th Century Fox. And so I scored this not far, but it is superior enough that I gave it 10-9 U2.
Oh, right. Yeah, I love how Bono takes and turns phrases around like that to give them that new perspective. He'll do that instead of seen to believe, he'll do the other way around. And I think it's such a powerful poetic tool. Todd, let's hear about the tools that you've got for these guys. Give me round 5.
All right, Kite versus Alabama Song. So let's start with Kite. I like the cool mellotron at the beginning, and I really like the music on this quite a bit. It grew on me. So this album I was much less familiar with, so I just played it over and over for the past week. So I'm pretty familiar with them. It's interesting. Bono said that the song was about realizing how his daughters will no longer need him one day, but reading the lyrics, it seems pretty clear to me that it's about the fickleness of the music industry, and maybe this was coming off of pop in Europa and stuff, and kind of how fickle it is. I don't like, so, Bono does a great job with lyrics. I feel like this is not one of his better ones where it fades out. He's talking about the last of the rock stars and hip hop drove big cars and the new media was a big idea. And it's just kind of ridiculous. They need a little bit of quality control there. But I really like the song kind of overall. Alabama song. This is an old song. Kurt Weill, I think, and Bertolt Brecht. I don't really like this kind of opera stuff. I listened to the opera version just to kind of get a grounding of it. David Bowie did a version of it that's unlistenable, but he put an acoustic version of Space Oddity on the back, so it still sold pretty well. It's the first of 2 covers on the album, and I don't think this one is great. So it was easy for me to give to U2 10-9.
All right, and then Brian, let's go ahead and have your round 5.
All right. As far as Kite goes, believe it or not, this is actually my favorite track on this album. The Who's to Say's, they stand out for me. It reminds me of a particular way that my church choir sings the Beatitudes, and when that week rolls around, it stands out. I love the way the Edge's guitar goes in this song. It's almost like you're just swaying back and forth. It kicks in with that little bit of bright fuzziness right when the chorus and the Who's to Say hook starts. As far as Alabama song, I listened to that opera version too, and this song doesn't really stray that much from it, but it makes you feel like what did I put here? You're riding a psychedelic carousel through a demented funhouse hall of mirrors. Given what we all know about Jim Morrison's habits and vices, the concept of dying without whiskey can take on a little extra meaning, but it's just not the song that Kite is, and I scored this one a knockdown for U2, 10-8.
Wow, our first knockdown. I didn't even know if we'd get one. Holy cow. All right, that's exciting. Tim, top that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Brian here. This may be my favorite track on the album, and I love the lyrics, and I do. It does strike me when I read about how. Even before I read that Bono said he wrote it about his daughters and the fact they wouldn't need him at some point. It's always struck me about my sons. My sons are both in high school, and I'm going to be Pete, you're going to have to send me some liquor or something because I'm going to be so depressed when they eventually leave. But that line about who's to say where the wind will take you, who's to say what it is will break you, I don't know which way the wind will blow. That's just, I don't know. That just strikes me about my kids, and they're going to be leaving, and I got to take care of themselves. One day they won't need me. But the vocals, especially when Bono hits that high note, I'm a man, I'm not a child, and into the rest of that's just an amazing vocal part that he does. And the rest of it is just a really damn good song. Alabama and Bertolt Brecht, again, I want to find the Nazi Bell time machine and go back in time and kick him in the rear end. That is, my God, that's a bad song. I don't know how it was even a good song ever. So I scored this 10-8 U2.
That's fantastic. Yeah, there is a quality to the maturity of the songs that are on U2's side of the thing, whereas the Doors are doing more time breaking through, and maybe there's a dating to that kind of a concept. But it's interesting to have him talk about this song with Kite, where you can take multiple perspectives. It can belong to anybody about anyone that they love, that whether it's a breakup song or kids growing up or him and his dad just never quite figuring it out. It's an interesting challenge for the Doors, and will their weirdness win out over the quality of the maturity of that U2 showing. Let's see what happens here in round 6. We've got In a Little While versus Light My Fire. Brian, what do you got?
For Light My Fire, I'm going to start off with a couple of quick anecdotes because I can. In high school, I worked at a liquor store, and there was a radio station just down the road, and one of the evening drive DJs he was pretty much regular. He told me that DJs used to use this song when they needed to take a smoke break or a bathroom break, so that gave me a little insight into his life. In college, we used to joke that Jim passed out during the recording, so the whole middle fill was just them trying to wake him up. All right, so let's take a look at the actual song. At this point on my scorecard, the Doors need a big round, and here they get it. This song has so much going on. I just can't get past what Ray Manzarek does on this track. The Doors, they don't have a bass player. So Ray is playing the Fender Rhodes keyboard bass with one hand and a Vox Continental organ with the other. And it's not like he's playing background filler. There's a full-on organ solo right in the middle of it, and it's right out there in the forefront. Plus, he's kicking Jim to wake him up at the same time. So, for someone like me, I type like a three-fingered chimp. So the fact that he's playing two different instruments with two different hands at the same time, it's incredible. And plus, at least for me, it's right up there with Hello, I Love You as the Doors' signature song. And that's going to be hard to beat. And U2 comes back with In a Little While. And I love the nice slow burn this song has going on. Bono said they recorded it in the middle of the night and his voice was trashed. But I think that's so added with the story he's telling. When the night takes a deep breath and the daylight has no air, if I come crawling home, will you be there? He's been out all night, working, drinking, smoking, carousing, whatever. And he just wants to get home and he wants his love to be waiting there for him. And I think it takes a heck of a song to avoid a knockdown when you're facing the signature song. But U2 does that here, and the Doors take the round, but it's only 10-9.
Wow, all right. What about you, Tim? How did you have it?
In a Little While is a good song. Maybe Bono was trying too hard for the too many Guinnesses and cigarettes sound in his voice, because I just thought he didn't sound very good. This may be the only U2 song I've ever heard where he doesn't sound particularly good. I like the song. I really love it. He does it again, Pete. We were talking about this a moment ago, how he'll twist a conventional saying to around a little bit. Instead of "Be still, my beating heart," we get "Slow down, my bleeding heart," which, known him might be a double entendre, which is kind of funny. It's a good song, but "Like My Fire" is a classic. All right, the song is awesome, and I read where there are critics that don't like some of the lyrics, but I love. No time to wallow in the mire, and our love become a funeral pyre. I just think those are awesome lyrics. And you know what we forgot? And I forgot this, maybe you guys didn't. Jose Feliciano recorded this.
I made a note of this too. I went back and listened to that, and it's fantastic.
It is, but this one is awesome. And I just, even if Jim was, they had to kick Jim over on his stomach so he didn't pull a Jimi Hendrix in the studio there. I don't know what the hell was going on. But I scored this a knockout for the Doors, 10-8.
Wow, another knockout. Wow. Yeah, nice. Todd, how did you have round 6?
Yeah, if they were trying to wake him up, maybe they pumped adrenaline directly into his heart. That might explain some of the singing there towards the end. So I'm liking this theory. So in a little while, I really, really like this song, and it's I'm not a traditional kind of U2 fan, and I really like this song. It has a blue-eyed soul kind of thing going on, and
this episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
reach out to us on Twitter
at Pete A. Turner
or at JohnLG69
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
It's I'm not a traditional kind of U2 fan, and I really like this song. It has a blue-eyed soul kind of thing going on, and really cool music, and the singing. I love how it's ragged, and I love that he's not. It feels less self-conscious than a lot of his other singing, and I love the topic of just kind of like crawling home from the pub and asking for forgiveness, instead of permission. And so I just think it's a fantastic song. It might be my favorite one on the album now that I think about it. But again, Light My Fire is a classic. I recommend going on YouTube and watching the Ed Sullivan Show version. It really shows the drummer, John Densmore there, just playing great. He sounds even better there than he does on the album. And of course, they were not allowed back on because he's saying couldn't get much higher, and which they thought was a drug reference. So that was a way that they sort of blew their career a little bit. The other thing I found out researching this was that the album version is actually too slow, and it's in the wrong key, like 3.5% slower, and a full key slower would be, I guess, 5.5% slower. So I actually have both versions. I listen to both versions side by side, and I think that the original key sounds much better, the faster version. But this one was 10-9 for the Doors.
Leave it to Todd to know the percentage that it takes to drop a song one key. 5.5%. Duly noted.
It's just the 12 through to 2.
And then does it matter at all that Joey Ramone wanted this to be the last song that he ever heard while he was alive? Does that help at all?
That's interesting. I did not know that.
No, I read that too. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, it's a neat. When you're all peers at that level and someone asks for that, that's just such a cool thing. Regardless of what band it is, to have that thing, that's pretty sweet. All right, let's get into what I call the Burford round. This is the late middle rounds that seem to be troublesome for fights, and we've got Wild Honey versus Backdoor Man in round 7. Let's go ahead and have Tim lead us off.
Wild Honey, I read that, was it one of the band members or Brian Eno or somebody said that this was their Obla Di Obla Da.
Yeah, I think Edge said that.
Yeah, Edge said that. And then also, that was Brian Eno said that it was a Van Morrison song, so that's kind of interesting. It's a fun song, but I've never particularly liked it. But listening to it again, I liked it a little bit better, especially up against Backdoor Man, which I didn't particularly like. I know I'm supposed to like old blues songs, especially with the in-your-face sexual lyrics. Maybe I shouldn't say it like that. Anyway, especially with the sexual lyrics. Eat your dinner, eat your pork and beans. I eat more chicken than any man ever seen. Okay. Maybe this was part of the soul food motif. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. But I found that lyric a rather infelicitous juxtaposition with the title of the song, I might add. I just think that these are both sort of throwaway songs. And I did think about listening to this if, gosh darn it, which Zeppelin song does he say, does Plant say, let me be your backdoor man? Remember, anyway, I wonder if it was a reference to this because I think it was after this. Anyway, I don't particularly like either of these songs, so I scored it 10-10.
All right.
It's a whole lot of love. It's a whole lot of love.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I had to get through the whole drum solo in my head to get to the lyrics.
Thanks.
It took a while.
Let's not forget to point out what a coward Tim is for not picking a winner on this one.
Yes. I should have gone ahead and just self-confessed that. I'm sorry.
Yes. It's always easier when you self-confess. But that's okay. You're not the only one to have a tie in this one. Kurt Gomez, who's on our CompuBox numbers, also managed to have no courage. So, ties and 10-7 rounds are bound probably in this thing. So let's go ahead and have Brian show us his guts.
Wild Honey, even the White Album had to deal with Rocky Raccoon.
And Wild Honey Pie.
You two, they got to deal with Wild Honey. I got no idea what they're trying to do here, but it doesn't work for me. If they were to do an album of children's songs, maybe this song would be redeemable. But on this album, it just stands out as goofy and just plain out of place. For Backdoor Man, when you're in an album fight, the number one rule is if you do a cover, you got to do something to make it stand out, to make it your own. In this case, given the level of competition and what I already said, I might be inclined to alter my standards, but I don't really need to. I think Manzarek's organ and Morrison's vocals really do make this a Doors song. And you can still feel the Chicago blues in it, but you can't deny who's owning this version. So I gave this round a 10-9 to the Doors.
Todd, how'd you do?
So Wild Honey, I agree. My notes I just wrote doesn't really fit on the album, does it? One thing I did like about it was a strange harmony or double tracking. There's something going on with the vocals where Bono is either double tracking himself or there's somebody doing harmony, and it's out of tune and kind of wobbles a little bit. I thought that was kind of interesting, but and just the visual of Edge kind of strumming on an acoustic guitar. I don't know why that cracks me up, but this I don't really think it fits on this album, or maybe it would be something on the end or a bonus track. Backdoor Man, this is the second cover on the album, and when I was doing my research and reading, it turns out that the Doors would play this at Whiskey A Go-Go. They would start with Whiskey Song and they would segue it into Backdoor Man, which makes it, to me, 10 times more interesting to kind of combine Bertolt Brecht and the blues and then with what they're doing. And I was like, holy cow, there's like kind of a genius going on there. And also the cover stands by itself too. Like you said, the test for a cover is, does it add to the original? And it definitely does, because it's definitely the Doors, but it's definitely Chicago too. In the original version of the song, the full lyrics, the Backdoor Man actually gets caught and shot, but then the nurse wants him to be saved, and then the judge's wife wants him to be saved. And so all the women are pulling for his recovery, basically. And I personally, I like the lyric about kind of, he's going to make a Sunday chicken dinner out of what you consider your pork and beans. He's like basically, saying, you take your wife for granted, but she's my Sunday dinner. I thought that was kind of cool. I thought that was just kind of a funny double entendre there. But anyway, I think it's great. It would be so cool to see that live. If I could see the Doors play that live, I think it would have changed my life. And it sounds really good on the record. And I've said this before, but it's really hard to get that live feel on a record like that, but they managed to do it. So this was easy, 10-9 for me, for the Doors.
All right, well, let's go on to round 8, Peace on Earth versus I Looked at You, and let's go ahead and have Brian, start us off.
I looked at you. The song has a real bright and poppy feel, almost Beatles-esque in that regard. The organ and drums sound great, but lyrically, there just isn't much going on here. Now we're on our way. Now we can't turn back. We looked, we smiled, we walked, we talked. It just didn't do it for me there. Peace on Earth. We're talking about a utopian ideal that realists know is unachievable, as unfortunate as that is. The song was written in response to an IRA bombing that I'm going to leave to Dr. Tim how to pronounce. Ed just said that this may be the most bitter song U2 ever recorded. I think the lyrics in the first verse sum that up pretty perfectly. Sick of sorrow, sick of pain, sick of hearing again and again that there's going to be peace on earth. Later on they say, hear it every Christmas time, but hope and history won't rhyme. So what's it worth, this peace on earth? They take a page from the Doors book and they add in some organs into the forefront of this song. I picture Brian Eno playing. I don't know who actually played. I can't find any credit on it, but this is an exceptional song, and U2 takes this round 10-9.
All right, Todd, how did you have?
Okay, interesting. I think I disagreed with Brian on this one. I wasn't crazy about the song, and I didn't like the melody. It seemed kind of repetitive to me. I read in the Rolling Stone article with Bono, he said that Imagine, he got a copy of Imagine when he was 12, and it had a huge effect on him. And I feel like this is kind of the lyrics is sort of the bad part of Imagine. I remember that bombing. If it's the one, there was a big one right around that time where they bombed something in Ireland, and then they'd put a second bomb in the evacuation area and killed a bunch more people. So I recall the bombing. I didn't realize that's what that was about. But anyway, this song just didn't grab me for whatever reason. I had trouble connecting to it. I looked at you, not one of the stronger ones either. There are interesting chords in the chorus where they're too late, and they keep changing into the chords. I thought was great. I thought the vocals were great. The keyboards, obviously, good. And also, I like the fake endings. So even though it's very kind of 60s sound, a little bit dated, I gave it to the Doors 10-9.
When you say it's dated, can you put a better handle on what that means?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I was almost going to say it's samey for the rest of the album. It doesn't distinguish itself much from the rest of the album. And so maybe that's what I'm saying. Because, the Doors sound is a little bit dated just in general. Just in the sense that they've influenced so many bands and that they've had such a distinctive keyboard sound.
The keyboard sound, to me, that seems like the thing that's dated the most, because the drumming is not, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think the drumming is fantastic. I think, like, if Jim Morrison never met these guys, they'd be like jazz greats,
Right. Okay. Tim, how did you have it?
I think anytime U2 sings about violence in Ireland, they kind of know what they're talking about, and I think it usually has a pretty powerful punch to it. I didn't see this as Imagine. I can sort of see that, Brian, but Imagine I thought was just sort of like, abstract and generalized, and this is they're talking about a specific thing, that 1998 real IRA bombing in Omaha, which killed, I think, 29 people. These guys, it hits them where they live literally. So I think this song is very powerful, and it's bitter, it's sarcastic. Peace on earth. What? Talking about peace on earth. There's lines in there about there's no trees where they live because they cut them down to kill each other with. It's just a very bitter song, and in that sense, it's kind of atypical for U2. But I think it's all the more powerful for that. I think I look at you as just a throwaway song. And to me, this is what really struck me is it sounds so much like the rest of the stuff on the album. It's not, there are a couple of really great songs on this album, and then a lot of the other ones just sound like knockoffs of each other almost. So I gave this one to, but I was nice, and I gave this one to U2 only 10-9.
Only 10-9. Let's go ahead and go into round 9. When I Look at the World versus End of the Night. Brian, why don't you go ahead and start this round?
All right, when I look at the world, on another album by another band, this could be a standout song. As it is, I read that they recorded it so fast that they can't play it live because Edge doesn't remember how to play it. Mm-hmm. The way it starts, it seems like we're going in a different direction. The guitar starts out sounding gritty and dirty, but then, that more polished U2 sound comes in. I like where the song goes, and the guitar work is good, but I kind of wonder what it would sound like if they just stayed on that road that they were on to begin with. As far as End of the Night, I just finished reading a book called The Most Dangerous Animal of All. It's by a gentleman who thinks his biological father was, who he actually never met, was the Zodiac Killer.
Yes.
And, living in Zodiac country, it's of interest to me. Anyway, his father was known to play the organ and occasionally jam with Anton LaVey, who would later go on to found the Church of Satan.
Yeah.
Right? Despite the fact that this track doesn't really feature the signature organ sounds that we're used to, I can picture this as being something that they would jam to. It's dark and it's brooding, and the lyrics, they're lifted from the Auguries of Innocence by William Blake. In retrospective, when you think about the life and early demise of Jim Morrison, it's especially poignant. I'm going to give him this round 10-9 doors.
Wow. All right. Tim, how did you have round 9?
When I Look at the World is perhaps, along with Kite, my favorite song in this album. I just think it's a very interesting album. It's Larry Mullen Jr. and Bono that are the Christians in the group, and The Edge and Adam Clayton are sort of less so. I think that's right. But anyway, it's like, it's from the point of view of someone who's not Christian, basically. Look at someone his and say, how can you buy all that stuff with all the pain and suffering in the world? Specifically, I remember when this song came out in 2000, Pope John Paul II was still alive, and I'm not Catholic, but he's still such a powerful force in the world and in world Christianity. It always made me think him, because some of the lines about I'm in the waiting room, I can't see for the smoke, I think of you and your holy book while the rest of us choke. I mean, again, it's kind of a bitter song for U2, but it's told from the perspective of someone that doesn't share their faith, I think, and it's very interesting for that. It struck me, that what's that famous line about not the willing suspension of disbelief, but in this case, it's the willing suspension of belief, I think Bono is singing, which really struck me. It was really stepping outside of himself and talking and singing like that. End of the Night was a very interesting song, kind of moody, and it reminded me, I just kept thinking of Christopher Lee while I heard this song. I would have liked to heard a Christopher Lee version of the song, but I just don't think it's nearly as good a song as When I Look at the World. So I scored it 10-9 U2.
10-9. Okay. And then Todd, how did you have this round?
Those are interesting notes, by the way, from Brian and Tim. Now I'm thinking harder about what I'm going to say. So when I look at the world, this is the song where I had a note about U2's rhythm section. Like, this is exactly what drives them crazy, or drives me crazy about them, is that rat-a-tat, rat-a-tat, and then the bass just going dum 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 with no melody whatsoever. It's maybe they'd be better backing a drum and fife core or something like that. But this is kind of musically where I don't like it. And I think the lyrics are super interesting, just like you said. It's looking at people, and kind of like how do you derive comfort from this, or how do you believe what you believe, or how do you have a foundation like that? I think that's super interesting. But I just think that the music sort of I don't know, belies it or diminishes it. End of the Night is there's like a stoned undergrad going, "Hey, I just found a book by William Blake. It's super cool. Check it out, man." This is kind of the most overtly psychedelic song, where maybe even they said, "Hey, let's be extra psychedelic-y on this one," and with the bendy guitar and all that kind of stuff. It does feel a little bit tossed off, but I liked it better than the U2 song. So 10-9.
Well, let's go into the penultimate round here. This is round 10. We're going to go Take It As It Comes versus New York, and we'll have Tim lead us off.
New York is just a fine song. I read where I think it was Bono said it was supposed to sort of be a tribute to Frank Sinatra and to Lou Reed, which is kind of interesting. It's a gritty song, which I think befits a song about New York. The lyrics are really interesting, talking about the weather in New York and the crime and how the Irish have been there so long. I think they own the place, which of course an Irish band might know something about. I love the line about religious nuts and political fanatics. And I just think the music is really interesting. I think it's a well-crafted song. Take It As It Comes. I just thought, don't mean to repeat my criticisms here, but I thought it sounded a lot like a just different speed version of Break On Through to the Other Sides in a certain sense, and the organ part there, the keyboard part sounded like a blatant ripoff of Light My Fire, both of which are far superior songs. So I just thought New York beat this one, and I gave it to you 10-9.
All right, Todd, how did you have round 10?
Okay, yeah, New York is an interesting song I think it goes on a little bit too long. I laughed out loud when I realized that Bono was doing Lou Reed imitation in the verses, and then kind of jacked up Frank Sinatra in the choruses. I like the song a little bit better. It made me laugh, especially the first verse. It sounds exactly like Lou Reed, and it's very, very funny. Only Bono could rhyme Jews and Hispanics with religious fanatics.
Political fanatics.
Oh, was it political fanatics?
Yes, religious nuts and political fanatics.
Oh, that's it. Okay. Yeah, and I mean, come on, Bono. That's just crazy. It's sort of like he went to the Wikipedia page, it's like, well, the climate is, temperate. I wasn't crazy about this song. Maybe it could have been tightened up a little bit and taken out some of those, 3-syllable rhymes. But take it as it comes. My notes say, hey, it's the Doors imitating the Monkees. And I don't think they were around at that point. and the recycled organ riff, which is really good to reuse, reduce, and recycle. But the more I played it, the more I liked it. It didn't care for it on the first couple listings, and then as it went, I liked it. I'd play it twice on my way through the playlist. So I gave this one to the Doors 10-9.
All right. Well, I'm always a fan of reduce, reuse, recycle, and re-Switherspoon. Let's see what Brian has to say.
Well, if I can follow that one. Now that Todd mentions the Monkees, I think I hear it more. But, and Take It As It Comes, it's a catchy song. And I really hear the influence of the Beatles and the Byrds. As is typical in a Doors song, the organ stands out. But, this song, it actually has a real bass player. And you can really feel that in verse 3. And supposedly the song's about transcendental meditation, specifically Maharishi Yogi, who's famous for teaching the Beatles and Mia Farrow, amongst others. To me, it sounds like a guy who needs to think about baseball, if you know what I mean. Time to walk, time to run, time to aim your arrow at the sun. Take it easy, baby. Take it as it comes. Don't move too fast if you want your love to last. There you got it. New York. I said earlier that I've always related this album to September 11th. So that line that we had earlier, Irish, Italians, Jews, and Hispanics, religious nuts, political fanatics in the stew. Mm-hmm. But obviously, I relate that back to 9/11. But early in the song, a line that stands out is, in New York, I found a friend to drown out all the other voices, voices on a cell phone, voices from home. Mm-hmm. To me, that line means something special because I don't hear real well with background noise. So hearing a familiar voice that I know can make me feel more comfortable. In the end, though, this song it's basically a grocery list about things you're going to see in New York. There's better songs about New York than this one. So I'm giving this one a 10-9 to the Doors.
And does he say the word Alphaville?
Yes.
That okay?
Yeah.
And is he referencing that film noir Alphaville from, I think it was in the 60s?
I thought it was the restaurant.
Okay. All right. Well,
you might be right, Pete, but that's what I thought it was.
Yeah, because there was some kind of it doesn't matter. Everybody should go look it up. Look up Alphaville and see if that makes sense. Anyhow, let's go into the final round. Todd, why don't you go ahead and do it? Let's have round 11, Grace versus The End. Go ahead.
All right, Grace. So one of the things that I like about you too is just that they're so sort of Catholic and religious, and they don't make any attempt to hide it, and it's, I guess, part of their earnestness, part of their charm. And I went to a Catholic high school, and I've probably been to mass more times than most Catholics, but like Grace, the priest hammered this into us as the presence of God, and so he's doing an interesting thing. Comparing it, Bono's doing an interesting thing, contrasting with karma, eye for an eye, and then versus, kind of forgiveness and that. And there's some lyrics in there. I recognize some stuff from, I think, Matthew. And then he talks about Grace as a pregnant woman too, which is interesting. So I really did like this song. And I like I think it was a guitar, almost sounded like an organ on the verge of distortion, which was really cool musically, the production. So this is a really, really strong ending to the album. However, it's up against The End, which is one of those songs, like Tim was saying, you kind of have to deprogram yourself because, over the 51 years, there's tons and tons of, things you see, Apocalypse Now. Pete, I was telling you, Nirvana did a version of this.
Yeah.
When they go, the killer woke up in Belgium. He poured a lot of syrup on his waffles and he walked down the hall. And then he takes out a quarter and he plays the Waffle House theme from the jukebox. And so, I can't hear the song without hearing Chris Novoselic, doing that crazy thing. You know, and the lyrics are a little bit nutty. Again, we're back to like the stoned undergrad kind of thing. But, you know, the song really hangs together, and the guitar really works, and the mood, it's a big mood, as the kids say. And I just really like it. Also, I had no idea that what I thought was rhythm guitar was actually Jim Morrison saying the F word. So that was kind of interesting when I followed along with the lyrics. I guess it makes sense. But anyway, all told, the end is a far stronger song, and just sort of a cultural firmament at this point. So I gave it to the Doors 10-9.
Brian, how about you? How did you have this round?
You know, as far as Grace goes, I think it was a nice way to end this album. You know, it's soft, it's pleasant. You know, the intro, the guitar and bass almost gives it an AM radio feel. But, you know, thankfully that doesn't hold. I like how they play Grace against itself. Are we talking about the biblical state of grace, or an angelic person named Grace? You know, when she walks on the street, you can hear the strings. Grace finds goodness in everything. You know, later Grace makes beauty out of ugly things. You know, it's just it's pretty introspective song, and it's a great way to close out this album. And in the end, I really don't know what to make of this song. It's dark, and it's trippy, and it's long. I might say it's the wrapping up of a bad acid trip, but I wouldn't know. You know, much like Dr. Tim, I didn't hang around with that crowd growing up. But since I'm fond of making pop culture references, I'm going to say it's a combination of acid, transcendental meditation, the Michael Douglas character in Falling Down, and Beavis and Butthead. Right? You know, after he walks on down the hall, he checks in on his sibling. You know, hey, what's shaking bacon? He goes to his parents' room, and he does the whole Oedipus thing. And then, you know, he takes another trip to the back of that blue bus, whatever the hell that means, right? Probably some drug reference. And then he turns into this character I'm going to call Pornholio, which is like Beavis after he eats too much candy. And he just goes,
Are you threatening me?
And then the song is over. So,
Brian, was that Cornholio or Pornholio?
Pornholio.
I changed it to Pornholio because.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for catching that.
Totally apropos.
I had to give this round 10-9 to you too.
That's fantastic. Yes. All righty. Well, great. Tim, defend your dissertation. Round 11. You're up.
Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, clearly the end wins this. Grace to me was a 5-minute version of the Beatles' Her Majesty from Abbey Road. You know how Abbey Road ends with that wonderful second side in the end, and then they have that 14-second stupid McCartney thing called Her Majesty at the end.
Yeah,
it's just kind of like, why did you do that? I overstate the case clearly. This is a pretty little song, and as Brian correctly pointed out, the double entendre there between grace is somebody's name and then the Christian concept of grace, it works. But you know, it's like being up against Stairway to Heaven here, and you just get body slammed. I mean, I like the song, but it doesn't have a chance. I love the part about the end that strikes me the most is not all those drug lyrics, but the one that he repeats a couple of times, the West is the best. I mean, was he channeling Samuel Huntington in the past, or what was he doing there? I love it, but it was kind of interesting and weird, and doesn't seem to go with the rest of the song, but maybe he just liked the fact that it rhymed. So, I mean, that's just an awesome song, even though it's total excess, of course. But I scored this big for the Doors, 11-8.
All right. Well, that right there, that's the end of the fight. Well, let's take a look and see just what the heck happened here. You know what? Before we do that, I want to ask you guys a question. We've got a great and a published poet, and then we also have a songwriter of, with very few peers in Bono. What did you guys think of the songwriting aspect of what these guys wrote down?
As great a poet as Morrison is, I thought he could do more on several songs on this album, and it hurt him. I just think U2 they had more polish. I don't know if because it's the 10th time around or not. I just felt that they had more tools in their disposal to put songs together.
Tim, what did you think about the songwriting? Writer v. writer.
Well, it's hard for me. Part of it, besides disabusing myself of the cultural, again, connections that have been made over the years, particularly with these particular few Doors songs, I have to sort of like go, okay, wait a minute, because I think, well, U2, sort of not really a Christian band, but in many ways a Christian rock band against a bunch of degenerates from the 60s. And so I have to try to force myself to be fair to them musically, because I'm sorry, I just don't want to hear a song with a bunch of F-bombs in it. That does nothing for me. I think that's, I understand it's rock and I go with it. And I'm sure I've listened to a lot worse. And I'm sure I've said worse, but I just doesn't do much for me musically. I mean, I think it's a cop out. Maybe it wasn't in, 69, 68, whatever. So I just, on the other hand, I don't think this is particularly one of the better U2 albums. I think U2's done a lot better albums than this album. I mean, this is one of their ones that didn't get 1 and only got to 3, for instance. Although it sold, how do you sell 12 million copies and only get to number 3? I can't figure that one out. I don't know what the metrics were at the time. But basically, I tend to think that the craft. When you say the songwriting, Pete, are you talking about lyrics and music, right? You're talking about both.
Well, I'm talking more about the lyrics in this case.
More about the lyrics. Well, I mean, there's all these sort of trippy psychedelic. There's a reason the Doors album is referred to as a psychedelic rock, right? But I mean, I think it tries really hard to be deep a lot of times, but a lot of it I think is just drug out of nonsense. And I think frankly, I do. And I think a lot of the U2's lyrics are very well thought out and they mean something. So I think U2 wins that hands down.
Todd, do you have any input on this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm taking in what Brian and Tim are saying and trying to combine it with my thoughts. I think the Doors, there's the Doors are like a force of nature, it's like the transfer of enthusiasm, and Jim Morrison is just the right kind of combination of aggro and soul of a poet and acid head to pull it all together, but just barely, but it was highly influential on a lot of things, rock and
yeah, no doubt.
And so, so we're hearing it backwards through a telescope, and it's very, very hard to do, U2, well, this is a much, much better crafted album, I believe. And some of the lyrics, are written, from a state of sobriety, which I'm sure helps. It doesn't have that same influence, like it didn't make a dent in the universe. That's something that makes me like the Doors better. There's just that messiness and that just flailing around and just scribbling outside the lines and trying stuff, and most of it works and some of it really doesn't. And there's something that I like about that, and reaches me on a deeper level than like a well-crafted pop song, verse chorus solo, whatever, and then also with the kind of crystal production of it. Maybe if there were more mistakes in the album, it would be better in some ways, if that makes sense.
Let me throw in on that, if you don't mind. I'm going to say real quick, the analogy strikes me here, and Todd, that's really interesting you say that, is the Doors are, 19th century romantic music with a capital
exactly.
R. And U2's Baroque. U2 is Telemann in Handel and Bach.
Yeah.
And the Doors are, I don't know,
like
who would that
Beethoven.
Be? Yeah. It's romantic versus, like almost mathematical precision in a sense.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, and it goes right to the Aldous Huxley and the William Blake. Mm-hmm. That that same it comes right out of that tradition. I think the musicians are a hell of a lot more disciplined though than Jim Morrison. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like a classical versus romantic.
Well, U2 was stone cold sober. Well, except for Guinness, big difference, right?
Except that one song that I liked about the hangover.
The other thing that Jim Morrison snuck by all of us, so there is some songcraft going on here, is Into the Night has the word night 16 times as a rhyming mechanism, and the word light has 6 times, and that's it. That's all. He's just snuck a bunch of light and night by us, and it didn't bother us. So there's something to be said for what they're doing, and certainly something to be said for the importance of singing about a fight you were supposed to have with your friend that kills himself. There's a lot of power on both sides of the of the album here, so I appreciate what you guys have done. Let's see what Richard has to say in the post-fight.
Pre-fight numbers for the first time were pretty far off, and I'm glad I at least used the human factor to tighten it up a bit on my prediction. It did come out razor close with an average 104 to 103 on the official cards and 105 to 103 when adding in the unofficial cards. 10 cards were used in this pool, I think the most we've ever had, and 8 of the 10 pretty much agreed almost to the number. Only 2 went with the Doors here, and while the pre-fight numbers said one thing, you can't really argue with the 8 to 2 factor. But I'd like to shed some light from my unofficial perspective and get away from the numbers for just a second. I really like both of these albums. I did not enjoy this fight. Pete and I had a little conversation about this afterwards. It's something about the two albums and the song v song format that seemed to highlight each album's weaknesses, for me at least. On one hand, you had a veteran band later in their career, very polished, with modern, expensive production, but also not particularly hungry. You can't argue the strength of the first 5 songs on this album, though. They are fantastic. Probably the very reason why U2 won this fight. But even those songs, which I gave 4 out of the 5 rounds to U2, sounded, to me at least, to be about a beat slower than they should be. Almost kind of like Tired Old Men, a little bit, just a little bit. And then you had the Doors, young, energetic, and hungry, but as a band, not quite fully formed yet. So you ran into a little sameness with the songs. Plus, it wasn't helped out at all by late 60s non-Beatles production. It just didn't sound polished enough at times, especially on those kind of in-between songs. Full disclosure, I was one of the 2 that went against the group and felt the Doors had just a hair better album here, because All That You Can't Leave Behind really petered out for me after Kite, after round 5. But even on my card, and when looking at each round, judging each round, it was razor thin close. We're not talking about hating an album or loving an album here. They were just very, very, very close. But as I said in the pre-fight, do not ever ignore an album of the year. Good advice. Anyway, hope that helps.
Yeah, Richard did not get close on this one, thinking it might be a landslide for the Doors. It is a split decision. If you guys are not scoring at home, I will reveal to you the big win here. U2 wins this one, 2-1. Todd has the Doors winning 107 to 102 in a pretty healthy smash following Richard's predictions. But Brian and Tim have this 105 for Tim to 101, and Brian has it 106 to 102. And that sort of follows the compubox, which is oddly very similar. We had 6 different judges, myself, Mike LaPerry, Phil Green, Scott, Jenny, and Kirk, and also my buddy Marcus scoring it. But it looks like 105 to 104 with a 1-round difference for most everybody. So it's a really, really tight win with the 105-104 average. Any thoughts on that at all, Tim?
Yeah, I think that's striking, again, because it's almost unfair. The Doors, again, their first album. This is their first album. This is U2's 10th album. Mm-hmm. And the Doors still almost took it. So that goes to what Todd was saying about the power of the Doors as a group.
Yeah. And Todd, what do you think? You were the lone judge out of all the judges, official and unofficial, that took it for the Doors. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, very much so. I was very, very surprised. And especially when I picked up the Doors album, I listened to it recently, and all those hits and all those great classic songs were on it. I thought it would just be a rout. I wait to do my scoring. I do my scoring offline, and then I go look and plug it into the spreadsheet. And I was shocked with what I saw.
Brian, any final thoughts on your scoring?
No, I was surprised, especially after early on, how it seemed like U2 was running away with it. And I don't know, I can't say that I got ear fatigue from U2 because it's just so great, but it really shocked me how the Doors came back on the second half of the fight.
Yeah, it looks like the latter part of the fight, the last 4 songs, U2 really kind of drops it, and still does all right, but that's where the Doors caught up from. And it's funny because in the front of the album, both of them load up with their big songs, Break On Through and Crystal Ship and Elevation, Beautiful Day. And that's where U2 took them on like big song for big song in these compared rounds. And they handled that, but they didn't handle so the floor of the Doors album appears to be higher than what U2 put together. Just ever so slightly, but it made a difference in keeping the Doors in the game. All right, well, I want to make sure we do the disclaimer. We love these albums. That's why they're in the ring. We want you guys to support these acts. Even though most of the Doors are dead now, you can definitely buy it. Robbie and Densmore will appreciate the
I'm an optimist. I believe the Doors are half alive.
And I believe there are not enough Doors. That's and of course, U2 can always use more money because they're clearly hurting because they own most of Apple. So, and Edge managed to get a new home development pushed through in Malibu, which is likely in ashes now. Oops. So he'll get a big insurance settlement, and the rich will get even richer. Fellas, thank you so much for doing this. This was really a great fight. It was so close and so much fun to hear, and I love doing this with you guys. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.